about that, because if you send out your, as you create an email address, think that people are reading this and from like an academic or professional perspective, so like cutie77@yahoo, probably not the best email to use, more like your name dot last name at Yahoo. So it's cool to have the other one, but as you think about corresponding with teachers and students, you want to make sure it's a professional email address. So next, you usually have an education section, which would comprise, for you guys, I would start with, and I'm sorry that I'm killing the academic system, but what your equivalent of a high school would be. So what you're graduating or you've graduated now would probably be sufficient. You probably don't need to go to middle school or primary school. It's fine to just have kind of where you've been the last 4 years. And then really beef up the, like if you're involved in clubs, if there's anything that you did while you were at school. And it could be something like, you know, obviously VOICES should be like huge, because this is a huge time commitment. It's very meaningful and it makes a significant difference than like my being a member of like international club where I maybe like baked cookies one time. So, you know, think about, you know, making sure that you represent your club participation. And another thing that you can do in this academic section is your interests in terms of classes you've taken. So if you're applying to a school to be a chemical engineer, it's probably good to highlight the math and the, you know, whatever it is that chemical engineers do. So the subjects that are relevant to what you're trying to achieve, those are the subjects you want to list as, you know, already. Is this helpful to go over? And I have to be honest that I'm using a Wharton guide to resumes. So this is what they tell us at 26 to 32. You know, ideally we've written a bunch of resumes. So although it may seem like this is like a lower or high, I don't know, whatever the level you find this to be, this is what we're being told. So hopefully that makes you feel better, or just consider the source here. So again, education section. Let me just scroll down here so you guys can see the rest of this. In your job, or you know, with VOICES. And we'll talk about what are the good verbs to use, but you know, analyzed or was in charge of. You want leadership words like led and managed. You might have been managing like the water supply to your boss, you know, like to make sure he can drink, but boy did you manage that process. So think about like really strong words, and I've listed a few for you guys to think about that are like really good representations. And I'm not saying lie, I'm just saying like sell yourself. There's a difference. Because integrity is huge. Like if you didn't do something, don't put it, but making sure that it's represented well.
Answer the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Oh, you're gonna ask a tough one.
But yeah, does the objectivity of the resume writing affect the formatting? I believe that it's not that static. It's not that.
I couldn't hear the first word. Does what affect the resume writing?
Yeah, the objectivity. Like let's say, is it for school, for employment, for?
Oh, should there be a different version?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I should have stressed on this more, but considering your audience, you should have different versions of, to some extent. I mean, at the end, it's your life. Like, how much maneuvering can you do? Like, at the end, you've gone to this school and you've done this job, but there are sections that I would maneuver. So if it's for a job, you might want to highlight different sections and highlight different skills. While for a school, you want to highlight the academic aspect. I'd really push, like, so if you go to grad school, for example, your biggest sections should be like if you research, if you did something as an undergrad where you did a lot of research and it feeds into what you want to do as a grad student. Where if, you know, maybe you haven't worked that much and you don't want to highlight that. Does that address your question or not really? Oh, yes? Okay, if it didn't, I'm so used to me asking questions and people not answering it at all, going off on tangents. And at the end of the day, I'm like, I have no idea what their answer is.
Yeah, but you know, quite often it is usually difficult to include the ideas in these resumes. What
kind of ideas?
Yeah, let's say you need a very, very imperative appointment in, let's say, a government. You get me? Like you trying to include certain ideas into it.
Oh, well then cover letter. Awesome hotel manager, and like how passionate I am about the hotel industry and how I've grown up wanting to run hotels. Like you read this and you're like, wow, like at least I think. I don't know, I think I have this idea that I write so well, they're probably reading it. So I think that might be one solution. The resume only restricts you to so much space and formatting. Why not use the cover letter to really convey your message? So that's a great